You had that in grade 10, right? Some of you are probably like, oh, I wish I had this in grade 10. All right. I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna start back with these 3 steps when it comes to renos, and this is true for next year as well. The first step is to determine the amount or surface area or volume required. Like how much do you need to cover or fill in, okay? And you need to convert as needed. What I would like to add today is if you ever come across it, so for example, let's say we would paint this room and we only want to paint the walls. Would we paint the entire wall? Like if I measure this, if I measure the height of this wall and then the length, right? Do I paint every single surface in this room? Is every square foot going to be painted? There's these cabinets, right? You wouldn't paint behind those. There's the window. You wouldn't paint behind that window, right? And in my case, I have the whiteboard. You would probably not paint behind the whiteboard, right? So sometimes you're going to have to subtract surface areas, right? You're going to have to subtract areas. So I will make a little note here. Note you may have to subtract areas or volumes. Okay. Example, a window or a door, etc. And the question will tell you, right? 8. Another thing, do you know what trim is? Trim, if I trim this room, it's not cutting the room. Trim is in your houses is probably made out of wood, but there's like a wood stripe along the floor. In this room it's black, it's like a black, so that's trim. If you ever come across that, that's what we're talking about. They're moldings sometimes. Sometimes they're also in the ceiling. Some of your houses maybe have trim at the ceiling, and it's to hide imperfections where the wall meets the ceiling or where the wall meets the floor. It's just to hide that, right? So if you come across trim, that's what I'm talking about. In that case, you need perimeter. So maybe I'll add that here. If trim is mentioned, find perimeter. And I hope you remember what perimeter is. Perimeter is the distance around a shape, right? So if in a circle, the perimeter would be the circumference. Rectangular, it's just like add the distance or find ways to do that. Good? Okay, let's look at formulas. I'm going to go to page 10 here. This is page 10. So to calculate the cost of renovations, usually will require you to calculate the surface area of a room. And if you recall, a rectangular prism, which is just a box, right? The surface area is 2 times length times width, 2 times width times height, 2 times length times height. So you add that, right? Make sure you know that you're adding. We're doing surface area, we're not doing volume. So this one, this piece right here is top and bottom. Okay. And these pieces right here, I would consider the sides. Okay. So this is top and bottom. Maybe I'll use 2 different colors to kind of make sure you understand. Top and bottom. And then we've got the sides, and I'm sure you're familiar with that concept. If not, here it is, right? So if you just wanted like the sides around this shape, you would just want to do this part. If the top, right, this would be the top, and this would be the bottom. Okay, that's the bottom right there, like underneath here, and the top is obviously the top plate. So if you're interested in including those, then you would just go, you would use that entire formula right here. So if all you want is to paint the walls, you're not going to paint the ceiling, you're not going to paint the floor, usually you don't paint the floor, right? Then you would just go 2 times width times height plus 2 times length times height. So notice that both of these are including the height. That's how you know you're dealing with the sides, if the height is involved. Okay? If you want to paint the walls and the ceiling, okay, you're not going to go 2 times length times width. You're just going to go length times width, because you just want one of these two here, and for us specifically the top. So this would be length times width plus 2 times length times height plus 2 times length times width times height. And in this case, this would be the ceiling, and this would be the walls. And again, I think I'm going to stick with my color coding here. You're essentially from the original formula, this, right, and this represents the walls. Morning. Page 10. So these formulas, I would have them on my study sheet. Okay, if you find that you're going to need it, just do it and have them on your study sheet. Let's keep going. So this is if you have a rectangular room, but sometimes you have what I call an irregular room. Most of you probably, well, I wouldn't say most, but quite often there's rooms that aren't perfectly rectangular. So when it comes to irregular prisms, I want you to use this concept right here. To figure out the surface area of the walls, so this is just the walls, you figure out the perimeter of this room, so you will add up the distance around this, okay, and then multiply it by the height. Well, how does that work? How does that work? Well, think of, right, so if this is, let's say you have a room like this and it measures 4 feet by 8 feet. That's a very small room, by the way. The perimeter would be what? 2 times 8 plus 2 times 4, right? That would be 16 plus 8. That is 24 feet, right? So that's the perimeter. That would be the perimeter around this. So it's almost as if I'm taking this and I just make it one long 24-foot wall, and I will add a height to it. So I multiply the 24 by whatever the height is. So the height is going to come up to us like this. So that's why this shortcut, this one right here, I would like you to have that on your study sheet, okay? So let's say this room right here, looking from the top, has a height of 8 feet, okay? If you wanted the surface area, we will first figure out the perimeter. And it's a little trickier, okay? Let's figure out the perimeter here. If you add 20 and 30, that's already 50, right? And you might have to do a little bit of math here. 20 take away 6, that would make this 14, correct? And 30 minus 8 would make this 22. So now you can actually add everything up, and I'm already going to tell you that that's 100 feet. This is the distance around, okay? So the surface area of these walls would be 100 feet multiplied by the height of this room, and I know that that is 8 feet. So imagine you're cutting off these walls and you're just making one long wall that is 100 feet long now, right? Imagine you're painting one long wall that is 100 feet long and 8 feet high. So that you're breaking this down into just one long wall. It makes it a little easier. So if you multiply these two, you get 800 square feet. Okay, so that is the area that we need to paint. Minus any windows, minus any doors, anything that is not being painted, we would obviously subtract from this. Okay, it saves you time because it's harder to break this down into rectangles because sometimes you double count walls and whatnot. So this is your best way around it. Mr. Dirksen, would this work with just a rectangular room? Absolutely, if you want to use this every time, but this is only for the walls. Walls only, okay? You got to remember that. And most of our questions are going to deal with the wall only, not the ceiling, okay? Over on this side, if you wanted to figure out the surface area here, you just add up all of this. If this is 20, look up here real quick, right? If this is 20, I subtract this, that's 15. I subtract this from 20, I'm left with 6. Okay, so this little chunk is 6 here. So now you can add everything up. You go around, okay, and that gives you 108. 108 feet. And you multiply that by, in this case, the room is 9 feet tall. Okay. So just multiply that and you get 972 square feet. Walls only, okay? So that's a little shortcut. Did you know this already? Am I just telling you things that you already knew, or maybe you knew this already? No. But then again, I tell my sons to clean their rooms every day and they don't do it. So maybe it helps repeating things, right? All right. Stay off your phone. Sure. Sure. Someday they're gonna listen. Okay, let's do first example here. And there's a lot of space because I'm gonna break this down into smaller chunks. Okay, example A, rectangular room measures 144 inches by 6 yards and 2 feet with ceilings that are 8 feet high. Our standard is that the first number is our length, the second dimension is our width, and obviously this is our height. Okay, I don't think you would argue with that. You've been hired to replace the carpet and you're supposed to repaint the walls and the ceiling. Okay, so that's important. The new carpet costs $3.50 plus tax per square yard, and 1 can of paint covers 120 square feet and costs $32.89 plus tax. So we're going to have to add taxes to both of these. That's why it says plus tax. Break this down, okay? So you've got carpet and paint. Don't do it all at the same time. Do one and then the other, okay? So A says calculate the cost of paint after tax if 3 coats are applied. So let's do that first. Cost of paint. And how about you scan ahead a little bit? Like, where am I going to go with this? If I look at paint, the coverage amount is in square feet. Do you see that? Square feet. What are my dimensions in? Yeah, it's all like inches, yards, feet, like it's all over the place. What would make most sense? What should I convert these to? Feet, right? That's where I'm going to go. I want my answer to be in square feet. So I'm going to go ahead and do the conversions here. Convert. So I'm going to do that first. So for length, I'm going to go 144 inches. I don't want it in inches. I want it in feet. So I know that 1 foot has 12 inches. Cancel that out. So it's really 144 divided by 12. that is 12 feet. I just did this to remind us on how to convert. Generally speaking, you won't have to do this much work for a Reynolds question. Like, there's just too much that can go wrong. 6 yards and 2 feet. So 6 yards, 2 feet. I want to convert that to feet, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the 6 yard to feet, and then I will add the 2 to that answer to give me my whole dimension, okay? So 6 yards, 1 yard has 3 feet. Cancel that out. You get 18 feet. So 6 yard converts to 18. So in a sense, I have 18 feet plus 2 feet. So if that ever happens, just make sure you add. So that's 20 feet for the width. And my height, I already know what that is. Okay. So I will box this in to kind of show I've done my conversions there. Convert first. That's step number 1. So if you want to put a little 1 here, I did that first. If you look back in your notes, okay? Now I'm going to figure out the surface area. Surface area that needs to be painted, okay? What am I painting here? The ceiling and the walls, right? So I got to go length times width plus 2 times length times height plus 2 times width times height. So these are my walls, and this is the ceiling. Do I need to write out the formula, Mr. Dirksen? No, you don't. I just do this for your notes. If you want to substitute in right away, that's fine. So here we go. Length times width. So that's 12 times 20 plus 2 times length times height. The height is 8 feet plus 2 times width times the height, which is 8 feet. You clean that up. I would suggest show your intermediate work. And yeah, if you use this calculator, right, you have that. I would do it separately. 2 times 12 times 8, that's 192. And then 2 times 20 times 8, that's 320. The nice thing about doing this work separately is you can go back in your history and copy paste values, right? So you can go paste, 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 right? Just keep going and copying. So you have 752 square feet to be painted. And before you say, oh, that's what I'm painting, how many coats are we doing? 3, right? 3 coats. So total surface area, TSA is total surface area. You go 3 coats times 752. You want to do that right away. 3 times 752, that's the equivalent of that many square feet. So remember the 3 steps that I told you about. We find out how much we need to paint. I will highlight this because a lot of students miss this. They do that later. They want to do times 3 later at the very end. Don't do it later. You do it right away. Okay? Now, I will figure out CANSS. Should I do it underneath here? I'll do that here. CANSS. I go 2256 square feet divided by how much 1 can covers. And then you go, so you divide your answer by 120. That is 18.8. How many cans do I have to go and buy at the store? 19, right? You can't get away with it. So you go approximately 19 cans. Now, I want to make this point very clear. What would happen if you went 752 divided by 120, and you're like, oh, you need to buy about 7 cans, right? You would say 7 cans? Well, so 7 times 3 coats, I need to buy 21 cans, right? Like if you don't do the coats right away, you're gonna buy more than what you need. And the reason being is when you do the 3 coats, right? If I open a can and I paint, and I open another can and another can, if I have some paint left over, I'm gonna use that for my second coat, right? And my third coat. You're not gonna be like, oh, I can't use this anymore, right? I'll open a new one. So the leftover gets carried over. That's why you want to make sure you do the 3 coats right away, not after you figure out the number of cans, okay? Here we go with the cost. 19 times whatever it costs, $32.89. And I'm going to tell you can actually multiply this by 1.12 already. You don't have to wait until the very end. 32.89 times 1.12. Your total is, at this point you need a dollar signs, $6.99. What would that round to? That'd be 90, right? And this answers A. I'm going to cut this now. I'm going to slice this page in half. And so all of that was answering A. All of this, like the top half is all A. B, calculate the cost of carpet. Okay. For carpet, it's just the area of floor. And I know that the floor, if I lay it out here, I know that this is 12 by 20. Okay. Oh, you might say, Mr. Dirksen, isn't this length and that width? It doesn't really matter. Okay, it's a 12 by 20 room. So the area of the floor is 12 times 20, which is 240 square feet. What is my carpet sold in? Yards, right? Squared yards? Uh-oh. Can I just divide this by 1 squared yard? I can't, right? So I need to convert. So I'll say this. Carpet is sold in squared yards. Okay? Therefore, convert. So I'm going to take 240 square feet and I'm going to convert that to squared yards. Now, before I do this, I will remind you that 1 yard has 3 feet, correct? Oops, not square feet. We want square feet here somewhere, right? So you take this conversion rate. You can actually just, on your study sheet, if you want to do that right now, you just tell yourself that 1 squared yard has 9 square feet. You just add that to your study sheet, and then you don't have to worry about doing this step here that I just did. But 1 squared yard has 9 square feet. So we go 9 square feet down here, and 1 squared yard up here. Cancel. Yeah, we're converting areas. That is probably new. You probably didn't see that in intro. Okay. But it's still the same thing here. So we basically go 240 times 1 divided by 9. You get 26.6 repeated squared yards if you do this. I'll actually show you here. do we need to figure out how much carpet to buy in this case? Like, do we need to, it doesn't tell us what the coverage is of one box or anything like that. We are assuming that we buy 1 squared yard at a time. Okay, so buy 27 squared yards. You can't go, we're always assuming you can't buy a partial squared yard. That's what it comes in. So you need to go full squared yard. So cost will be 27 times the price, which is $350, times 1.12. That's 105.84. Okay. That answers B. So we didn't have to divide by anything because they didn't tell us that carpet comes in a box that covers, let's say, 3 squared yards. It didn't say that. So we're just assuming we're buying a squared yard at a time. So we round it to a whole number. Okay. Can you, maybe let's add this because you might look at this later on. Can't buy partial. This is a reason for me rounding. Okay. So here we go. Total. That's C, by the way, this part. C is asking us what is the total including taxes. Big deal, right? You're just going to add everything up. Usually if I ask you for this, you can get everything wrong in the previous sections. If you just show us that you're adding the 2 previous answers, you get full marks for this part. Okay, page 11. Okay, I'm going to stop here and let you practice this, okay? And the one I want you to try is on page 12. And I will make a slight change on page 12 because I think it gets a little too crazy. So I'll make it a little easier, just a little easier. Okay. So go to 12. And a can of primer covers 36,000 square inches. I want you to change that to 250 square feet. Okay. And I will also give you, because you're still, it's baby steps, right? When you do the total cost for this, figure out how much primer you need, how much paint you need. Okay, so figure out the primer, figure out the paint separately, and then add the total. Okay, watch for the number of coats and watch all of this. You're not painting the ceiling. You catch that here? You're not painting the ceiling. I'm going to highlight that. And when you're all said and done, this is the answer you're supposed to get. It's upside down so you don't get to see it properly. Okay? So give this a try. Do what I did. Figure out the total surface area. Do primer and paint, do all of those things, and then see if you get that answer. I'll tell you this, because some students are very frustrated when they're about to figure out the cost of things. I'll give you the surface area you're supposed to get. I'm going to do that up here. The surface area of the walls, before you continue, if you take away the windows and if you take away the doors and all of that, you're supposed to get 512 square feet. Okay. This is actually TSA, or TSA. This is without windows or doors. Okay, so that's also, before you continue, make sure you get 512 when you figure out the surface area to be painted. And then the coats and all that, you're gonna have to be careful. Primer only gets one coat, and the color requires 2 coats. So you're gonna have to watch out for that. 1 coat required of primer, and 2 coats required for paint. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, give it a try. It's going to be a bit of a journey, and it's okay to make mistakes. You just have to give it a try. Okay.